Okay. All right, I call to order the February 15th meeting of the City of New Bern Planning and Zoning Board. Kendrick, can I get a roll call?
Yes, sir. Board Member Marshall Ballard. Mr. Ballard? This is a roll call. Okay. And Board Member Mr. Luzo?
Here.
Board Member Margie Dunn?
Here.
And Chairman Brad Jefferson?
Here.
Board Member Rusty Ingram?
Here.
Board Member Kelly Kaiser?
Here.
Board Member Thomas Brownell?
Here.
And Board Member Kyle Beering? Absent.
He's absent. All right, so we have a quorum. All right, will everybody stand and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance for our country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right. So I don't always use this, but I'm going to use this tonight. My item number 4, Chairman's Remarks. I'm going to be here for a minute. But before we get too far into that, I want to welcome our latest member, Mr. Thomas Brownell. Thanks for signing up and being a part of this group. Can you introduce yourself and tell us why you're...
Sure, my name is Thomas Brownell. I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I retired from the electrical union, moved down here in April, and we love it here. I've sat on a zoning board for about 4 years on Long Island before coming up here, and I think I will be an asset to this city.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for being a part. All right, so moving on, I've got a couple things I want to cover. First off, we have had some discussions this week on a parking committee, but while we were talking about that, something came up that I'd like to talk to the board about and ask for their feedback on. It came up that our board, like many other boards in the city, does not have a set of rules and procedures. And I think we should have a set of rules and procedures so that a new chair or a new member knows and understands the expectations of them, how the meeting's going to run, where to find information, that kind of stuff. And linking to that, the staff asked me to get the board to give him the direction. And so that would be called out in the rules and procedures. So if anybody has any objections, I open to the floor about establishing some rules and procedures. Staff said there's some excellent examples from other sister cities that we could just adopt and kind of finagle for New Bern. Does anybody have any objection to giving staff recommendation?
No, I think it's a great
For
idea.
that? All right, so we're going to
So staff would put that together for us?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
and then we would vote on it.
Right.
Okay.
Yes,
All
perfect.
right. So directed? Does that work
Yes.
for you?
That would work
Okay.
out just fine. I'll try to see if I can have that prepared by the next meeting.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. Okay, next thing. I just wanted to discuss, it's come up a little bit here lately. We've had some more light shine on the board and just some more of our roles as this board. I want to remind everybody that we are an administrative board. We are not the final say. The Board of Aldermen is the final say. They are the legislative body. We are here to look at the application, make sure that staff has done their evaluations correctly, and then contrast that against plans of the city of New Bern. We should be focused on the zoning number, what's being asked for the rezone, or whatever's being asked in the application. It shouldn't, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, it shouldn't matter too much what the applicant is asking for, because things change. The applicant come in and ask, and we got all these plans, we're going to do all these great things, and then financing changes. And we've recommended to the board, and the board has voted on a zoning change, and then it all changes. So we need to consider and make sure that we continue to consider everything that is in whatever that zoning change is, from R3 to C2 or whatever it is. And that should be the primary focus. And to remember and to remind the public that that is our role, and that the Board of Aldermen can vote however they want, as we have seen as of late, regardless of our recommendation. And going along with that, I want to be real careful when we get into deliberating with the applicant or with anybody else, that we don't put any conditional recommendations on them. You can't say anything like, we'd vote on that, yes, if you put 50 more parking spaces or something like that. You can't say anything like that. So there's that. On this board, we also have, we can recommend this goes to the Board of Aldermen and say yes, meets all the plans. We can also say no, we don't think it should go to the Board of Aldermen. If we do that, we then have to say exactly why. And we have to cite why. We can't just say no. So it has to be no because of these things. It doesn't meet this plan or this wasn't done or whatever. We could also table it if we wanted to. So that in that time before the next meeting, if the applicant so chose, they could revise their application, they could withdraw their application, or however they saw fit. So I just want to put those couple things out there. I also then wanted to ask we have, oftentimes here lately, we've opened the floor up to public comment, which I am all about. I think the citizens should have absolute right to speak at public hearings for the government as a philosophy. But I don't know about the time frame. And because we don't have any rules and procedures, it has been told to me, we have to vote on every meeting if we want to put a time frame in to those comments. And so I would entertain a motion of, if somebody wanted to make that motion, of a time frame of 3-4 minutes, something like that. It's really up to the board, or we could not. But I can't make the motion.
So I make a motion that we limit the public comment in this particular meeting, since I guess we have to do this every meeting.
That's what I was told.
Yeah, in this particular meeting to 3 minutes.
A second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We have a 3-minute clock during the public comment. Okay, I think that's everything that's on my list. That wasn't too bad. I thought it was much longer in my head earlier today. So let's move on to action items 5A. Kendra, do you have a brief for us?
Yes, sir. And good evening, everybody. Didn't really get to start that off early, but I do, Mr. Chairman, just to also let you know, I did actually make a speakers list, so if anybody signed up, I will get that to you after I go through the actual item.
Perfect.
If you'll just give me a moment here, I'm just going to have to read off of the TV screens, but our first item is the rezoning. It's the REZ 002-822-2024. This is for Glenburnie Road. And the request summary here, actually, hold on a second. I apologize.
Don't unplug anything there.
I apologize for the stoppage. But the request summary, so the applicant is actually Ward and Smith, PA, and then the owners are JKB Associates Limited Partnership and RKC Associates Limited Partnership. The location, once again, is Glenburnie Road. This is towards or at US 70 West. The current zoning is residential 10, R-10 is the abbreviation. The proposed zoning is commercial 3 or C-3. The parcel identification numbers are 8-212-4004 and 8-212-026. And the size is 5.191 total acres, and that's the combination. This is 2 parcels. So the residential 10 or R-10 zoning district analysis, it gives you a general overview for the actual R-10 zoning district. The 10 essentially just means that 10,000 square feet makes up the minimum square footage for the lot size. Specifically, it calls out a couple different points. I'll try to shorten this and just make a short gist of it. It is ultimately designed for single family or 2 family is how it presents itself. It's encouraged. And essentially it talks about encouraging the continuation of single family in two-family. The commercial 3 or the C3 zoning district analysis, one and the same, similar. It gives you an explanation as to what that C3 covers, which is primarily geared towards offices, personal services, convenience, similarities to those types of goods and whatnot. And the uses comparison. There are several uses actually for comparison here. C3, I'll start with that side for the residential uses. So single family detached is a permitted by right. Single family attached also permitted by right. And a duplex is also permitted by right. From the non-residential side, you have some uses, just as I've kind of been explaining, it accommodates for those personal goods or convenience type of uses, business uses in essence. Some of the ones that are listed here, or I'll give you a primary, sales and rental of goods, merchandise and equipment, high volume traffic generation, NCDOT standard. This one in particular is permitted by right. And I'm going to kind of flip over to residential 10 or R-10. The residential uses very similar in some aspects. The single family detached and attached are permitted by right, while also the short-term rental was the one that I applied here, or whole house or partial house is also permitted by right for residential uses. Non-residential uses, you get a bit more complex. You have a governmental office building and supporting services continued there. It's a longer styled use, but necessary for in terms of for being a special use permit. Yeah, special use permit in that district. It's residential. Most commercial uses or non-residential uses are going to be a special use permit. The consideration, the proposed rezoning involves 2 properties that are currently zoned for residential uses and are currently vacant, as far as for what I would understand. The adjacent properties are zoned C-5, C-3, R-10, R-10A, and R-6. This may be considered reasonable because properties immediately abutting and adjacent to the actual subject property are also zoned C3. And here's just a picture of the subject property. And then you have followed that by the vicinity map for the 2 parcels and the aerial map for the 2 parcels. And then lastly, the zoning map, which again, you can see there's the distinguishment of the different colors which represent different zoning districts. C3 is that reddish color, while I believe R10 is that yellowish color currently. And essentially the actions needed next, adoption of the consistency statement and the recommendation for the Board of Aldermen. I'm going to now check on that sign-in sheet just to make sure so that you can call the speakers in order.
Sounds good.
I apologize, Chairman. Did you have any questions for myself?
I have no questions. Does the board have any questions for Kendrick?
I do.
Yes,
That's the school that's in the yellow, and that little sliver, is this all owned by the same property owner? That's already a C3?
I don't think it's going. I'm
Do you
sorry,
know?
I'm going forward.
The last time I checked, it was owned by the same property
I believe
owner.
that it is, yes, ma'am.
It is the same owner?
Yes, ma'am. There's 2 owners that are attached to the actual, I guess, the deed essentially, and it reflected both parties on the same difference of properties.
Okay.
Is there any consideration that needs to be taken into account because it is adjacent to a school area, that we're now making this commercial rather than residential?
I would have the belief that that would be up to the board in itself if they wanted to have deliberation pertaining to that. As far as for what we have on the zoning map, you have a few different zoning districts that are essentially abutting these 2 properties. So there's argument on essentially both sides,
Right.
and that would be a board consideration as far as I would understand.
And the 8-212-026 sliver, do you know how wide that is by any chance?
Not directly, no, sir. I apologize. I don't have
No,
that
that's-
information.
more questions for Kendra? No? I'll open it up to the board for discussion. Hearing no discussion, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Public comment. Comment from the public.
Was there a comment from the public?
Not on the sheet. There's two for the Thurman Road.
It's only for Thurman Road. If
Yeah.
it's for Thurman Road, then we should.
I got two for Thurman Road.
We should be fine to proceed, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I make the motion to go ahead and proceed and get C3.
So your motion is to find it inconsistency?
Yeah, I do. All
Yeah,
the other
here's
commercial
here's the
parameters.
worksheet. for
There you go.
Oh,
I found that from before.
Gotta do it now.
come on.
Board Member Gunn,
Consistent.
you'd have to make a motion just essentially if you found it to be consistent with the C3 proposal.
Yeah. All right, I make a motion that proposed amendment, no, not amendment. It is consistent with the land use. That the motion be C3, that it is consistent with the land around it?
Essentially being consistent with, yes, ma'am.
That's
Yes.
acceptable.
What does the land use plan say? That's what we're making a consistency based on.
Right.
Right, it's in the consistency statement, I believe.
Okay.
We got more.
I guess that's a question, right? Because it wasn't, I don't think it was in the plan.
This is one of our opportunities, though, and it's the best I can recall, so turning it to commercial would be consistent with our adopted land use plan.
Okay, that was the question. Thank
If you so agree. Of course, you can say it's inconsistent and still recommend it, we just have to point it out. So.
Okay,
Well, I say
all right, so then you may say that and then that.
There's
And this one?
There's a sample motion at the bottom.
Proposed amendment. Oh, well, then that's it, I just changed the years. So the proposed, but I gotta make a recommendation.
Yes.
So, the proposed amendment and presentation documentation are found to be consistent with the 2022 land use, updated in 2010 land use, and determined to be reasonable in the public interest, and that it is consistent with the land around.
All right. We're gonna get there, it's a new thing.
That was great.
We all need.
All right. I have a motion on the floor, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any more discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to item 5B. Mr. Kendrick.
All right.
I can email it to everybody after the meeting.
Our next item is going to be for REZ 002-829-2024. This is for 684 West Thurman Road. It's the initial zoning. And the request summary, the applicant/owner is Real Dogtors LLC, and the parcel ID 7-109-017. The location, 684 West Thurman Road, and the proposed zoning is commercial 3, or C-3, once again. The size is 6.1, give or take, acres. And the consideration, Real Dogtors LLC has requested to be annexed into the city's municipal boundary. At the previous meeting for the Board of Aldermen, which was held on January 9, 2024, the request for annexation into the city's municipal boundary was approved. Again, you've already heard the C3 designation essentially for that zoning district. It allows for multiple commercial or non-residential uses. And here's a picture for the subject property. Followed by, this is the vicinity map of the actual property, along with the aerial for the property. And the zoning reflection essentially of what surrounds the actual property. So, and again, I'll kind of reiterate, this abuts several different types of zoning districts. So you've got A5, you have A-5, which is agricultural, A-5 F, which is agricultural and forestry, and then you also have the C3, which is a commercial 3 zoning district, and you have R20, which is residential 20 to the right-hand side, or excuse me, the eastern side. So the action needed this time would be the recommendation for the Board of Aldermen, but if the board has any questions for myself, I'll take those at this time.
Is that the only parcel there that belongs now, that is now part of the city?
I wouldn't say definitively, because it looks as if there's there's more parcels necessarily on the adjacent side that don't belong to the city, but in that cluster, yes, that's from what I've seen, so. Because all the other properties have zoning assigned to them, so that's kind of what gives you that indicator to some degree.
Does anybody else have any questions for Kenny? All right, with that, without objection of the board, I'd like to bring up the applicant to make a quick presentation.
Good evening, Chairman, Board. Thank you for having us here tonight and giving us the opportunity to speak. My name is Michelle Christensen. My husband and I own the property at 684 West Thurman Road. I want to say a quick thank you to Kendrick and the rest of the staff for preparing our request tonight and for all of your help and patience with me figuring out this whole process. I really appreciate you. Half of what I was going to say tonight you threw out in your opening remarks, so I'm going to keep it on target for zoning only. But when we talk about consistency, C3 is seems like a pretty straightforward request. This is kind of zoomed in, but if you were to back that view up a little bit, it's just adding to a line of already C3 zoned properties on that road frontage. We had a lot of, for our intended use, we had a lot of options that we could, ask for zoning based on the surrounding area as well. But again, from a consistency standpoint, C3 seemed like it was following that plan. From a consistency in land use plan, this parcel is also adjacent to an already existing outdoor business on the left side with the equestrian center. So it would not, be out of land use in that regard either. This parcel is located within both a focus area and an opportunity zone in the city's land use plan. It's an area that's been specifically targeted for commercial growth. Commercial services in general in this area have not kept pace with the residential growth. So zoning this C3 would also be relevant to the city's overall big picture for this specific area of town. With that being said, if there are other people here tonight that want to speak to me later about specifics to the site plan or intended use that would be off topic tonight, I'd be happy to answer any questions that other residents may have. But with that, if you guys have any other specific or more detailed questions that I can answer. Otherwise, thank you for your time again tonight.
All right, thank you. And if we were to approve this and you were to go in front of the board, your previous comments could work. Politicians can decide as they will. So, we have to be much tighter here. So that hence my statement. Okay. So again, I'm going to ask the board without objection to open up for, I have 2 commenters and to limit them to 3 minutes each.
Chairman, I'll be in charge of the stopwatch after that.
Perfect. And Kendrick's going to run the stopwatch. So with that, no objections? Anyone? With that, I invite up Michelle Christensen. That was you. Perfect. Even I see I'm running the meeting over here. Okay, so then my other comment would be from John Jacobs.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Jacobs. I live at 25 Gables Road, New Bern, with my wife, Betsy Claggett. I'm not really prepared to give comments because I didn't realize that was the purpose of this meeting, but I do want to point out that Guy Nelson, an adjacent landowner, did provide written comments already to the board. I would like to just reiterate those and say that there are a number of homeowners in Gables Run who are very much opposed to the designation of this area as a C3 parcel. I think that I've been going through the rules of procedure today, and I'm glad that the board has voted to make those possible. But I've also looked at the ordinance as well as the general statute provisions guiding this decision. And so because there are vacant lots that are adjacent to this property, I don't know where the owners of those are. Could you tell me when I have 1 minute left, by the way?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You got a minute and 18.
That's why there's no one here, because no one really got notice, no one had time to prepare. I just happened to be able to change my schedule today. So basically, we disagree with the staff evaluation of the development services, that this is consistent with designated uses already. I'm going to submit comments on this report, but we also disagree with the answers to the questions that were made by the landowners. We think they're a little bit misleading, if not inaccurate. The zoning map is, let's see,
So you're
is
at 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. The map that's up there is a little bit misleading as well, because if you look at the broader area as opposed to just the very adjacent properties, it's all residential. There is a note that there is Harris Teeter in a commercial area that's already developed a half-mile away. That's not true. That's only as the crow flies, but if you go down Thurman Road and then make a right onto Waterscape, it's closer to a mile. The other property that is adjacent to it that's zone C3 is a single-family home, not intended to be ever developed commercially, according to the homeowner. And as you can see right around it, the green area, that's all agricultural. So by opening this up to commercial development, you're altering the nature of this area. And I understand that it is a Zone D opportunity area, but I'm not really sure how that ever occurred either. I need to go back into the history of the zoning. But we are opposed. We request that a decision on this be delayed so that the homeowners and adjacent community, by the way, this is an environmental justice street. It's a low-income area, not fully participating?
Just
Okay.
to give you
So we
3 minutes
request
to-
deferment of the decision so we can comment. Otherwise, we'll end up appealing the decision. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments. And real quick, before I open up to the board, I just want to also make clear that if this does proceed to the Board of Aldermen, there will be another availability for comment at that meeting. And you and the residents or anybody else that wants to make a comment will have carte blanche to do so. Just want to have that said. With that, I open it up to the board for discussion.
But it's already abutting other commercial property, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
What's it zoned at now? It doesn't show.
Right now, it has no actual zoning.
No zone.
Okay.
That's the purpose, is really to understand and determine the assignment for the zoning.
So it's just as opposed to rezoning it, we're zoning it.
That's
We would
correct.
like to, right,
Yes,
okay.
yes, sir.
I think it's important just to note here too, just so everyone understands, this was not the city's property and had no zoning when it was in the county. If it was still in the county, they could do absolutely anything they wanted on it because the county doesn't enforce any zoning. So any zoning district you recommend putting on it provides a whole lot more protection than it being unzoned in the county as far as the land use goes.
But even though it abuts a commercial zoned property, that property is not currently being used for a commercial purpose.
You're correct. There's a single-family dwelling that is on that current property, as far as I understand.
Right, and tomorrow that could change,
That's
but that's the
exactly
way
right.
it is
Yes.
today.
That could change at any time. So it's being incorporated with the city, which means the city now gets the taxes from it. So we have a value there as well.
Yeah.
if it's developed.
It's also important to note as well, in consideration for this meeting and the future Board of Aldermen meeting, that without implementing a zoning, the Craven County regulations still apply for a certain period of time. I believe it's 60 days, which means there is no zoning and they can apply for that.
For no zoning.
They can apply to develop something
But
under
they would have
Craven
to do it
County's
within that 60
regulations,
days.
which is, there's no zoning there, so.
But it
So
can only-
until March 9th, they could come pull building permits to build anything they'd like.
And building permits are time limited, correct?
So to put off a decision today would make it more likely that could happen. I don't think it would, but by, the letter of how the law works, and the law is asking you to look at what is the zoning around it. Again, typically, we find something is reasonable if there is adjacent zone property that is the same zoning district. When you
because
make
there's-
that recommendation, just by looking at this map. I'm not sure the history of that zoning or how something residential got zoned C3, but we're embarking upon looking at our entire map in a couple of weeks here, getting started. So what we'll be looking at these areas like where we're like, well, how did that happen and does this still make sense? But before us tonight is a request to do this, and it could very well by the law be found reasonable because it is adjacent to existing C3.
And knowing what's going to continue to happen around that area. Because you go all of Old Airport Road, there are businesses there, and then you can take the equestrian, the stables, you could say, well, that's a business because they're running the stables there. So it's, again,
Right, but the stables are not on a C3 property. The stables are on an A5 property.
yeah, but
So
it's-
it's a different zoning.
yes.
So I don't think that matters, in my opinion.
And I just want to say I made a note here to this gentleman's comments. I do have Guy Nelson's email. He sent that. I do have it. The board did receive it. Any more discussion on this item? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Do I need that piece of paper?
Do you need that?
Not for
Do
this
we need a
one.
consistency statement for this?
Not that
No,
I'm-
okay, so no, you don't need it.
We are just recommending this to be zoned to the Board of Aldermen or not.
Your reasoning can include the fact that it is or is not consistent with the land use plan and development surrounding it, whenever you give your justification for your motion.
Well, I mentioned that we do a C3 because I do find it consistent because we do have commercial property around it, and that area is going to continue to be commercial more as it gets developed. Right around the corner on landscape, special use permit going on over there, so I find it consistent.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. I am on this one. I think I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Absolutely. So we'll start with Board Member Ballard. Mr. Ballard, we'll start with you on the roll call. What was your vote? Yea or nay?
You agree that we should make consistency?
Tell him.
Sure. You just have to tell me what your vote is, sir.
Yea or nay?
Hold on, I'll come up to you. Hold on one second. So your vote as to whether you're going to say yea or nay to the actual vote of the item. Approval of it.
Keep the vote.
Yes, sir. Yea or nay.
Okay, so what do you got?
We're voting now.
Okay.
So is it yes or no? He's asking you.
I vote for it.
Okay. Mr. Aluzo, or excuse me, Board Member Aluzo?
I said yay.
Okay. Board Member Dunn?
Yes.
All right. And Chairman?
Yes.
Okay. And Board Member Ingram?
No.
And Board Member Kaiser?
Yes.
And Board Member Brownell?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. We're going to move on to item,
Just for the benefit, since we have an audience that cared enough to come out tonight, Robert, will you explain the next steps and what happens with a rezoning after we recommend it to the Board of Aldermen?
That's correct. I'd be happy to. The next steps for this particular project, as well as the rezoning before this, is we are going to ask for a call for the Board of Aldermen. That's essentially asking them to set a date for their public hearing. At that call, which is the first meeting is the second week of the month, they will either take it up or not take it up. If it's taken up, it'll be at the next regularly scheduled meeting. Those dates are available on their calendar. We can't give you a specific date today. Feel free to email our office. Either myself or Kendrick can inform you of that whenever it is actually put on an agenda. But at the Board of Aldermen, that public hearing will include the same presentation for the most part. The same information will be given to the Board of Aldermen, and you will also have an opportunity for public comment. And they do have a similar time limit there as well.
And will one of you also walk through the posting and the mailing procedures?
Sure. So in reference to the posting, there will be a newspaper ad that is essentially ran, I believe it's 10 days, if I'm not mistaken.
The time limit is between 10 and 25 days of the public hearing. It'll be the New Bern Sun Journal.
Yes, ma'am. And then in reference to the actual mailing, that's also the same timeline. So the notices will go out between that time period. And also a sign is posted actually for the property. Again, similar to what we've just previously had.
Mail notice by general statute is only legally required to go out to abutting property owners. New Bern has a ordinance that requires us to send it to all property owners within 100 feet of the subject property. So a 100-foot buffer around this property, those folks are the ones who will get mailed notice. And the sign that's posted on the property will be posted on the property facing West Thurman Road. So anybody that travels down that road can see, this is the date and time of the hearing, the location of the hearing, and the item number of it being heard.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. So with that, I will now move to section 6. And we have an item called public comment. And I'm assuming that means people can just come up and talk to us for 3 minutes? That's what we're doing? Okay. Is there anyone that would like to come up and speak for 3 minutes? Come up, state your name, sir.
My name is Lance Gibbons, and I am a citizen of New Bern, North Carolina.
Perfect.
Something that just stuck out to me when this gentleman first began his presentation. It was zoned. It was zoned agricultural. Now, for some reason, it's not zoned, and we seem to have got, I don't know. I just popped in because I saw the sign out front. But I noticed that, but nobody else later on noticed that it was initially agriculturally zoned property, parcel.
Are you referring to this image right here, sir?
Yes, sir.
So there's a distinction that needs to be made. Zoning is actually the colors that are shown on the map. That regulates the use. What it's currently shown as, in this case, there's a bunch of trees. We would call that a vacant use or a forested use. If there's something like a house on it, that is also a use. That's a residential use. The zoning, however, on that adjacent property is commercial. So when we're referring to zoning, it's based off of the map, not necessarily what's on the ground.
Okay. Well, I just heard the agricultural. Thank you. That's what I was laughing about. I'm sorry.
Hey, thanks for coming out.
Appreciate it.
Sure. You get 3 minutes.
I just wanted to address the members' comments about economic value of this development. No one knows or has seen the site plan yet, so I don't even know what they're envisioning. We've heard rumors of an 8,000 square foot facility open 24 hours a day. I don't know if that's true. But I do want to point out, I think there's, you referenced the economic value of this development. And yes, this is vacant land. It's been cleared, roughly 6 acres has been cleared. I believe you need a building permit before you can clear, so I don't know if one has been issued. I don't think so. But I think what you aren't taking into account is the diminution in value of the adjacent landowners' properties. In our subdivision, most of the homes go for over $900,000. With this property going up there, and if it is a facility along the lines of what we've heard, you're going to have 24-hour barking, which is going to diminish the value of these properties. I didn't pay nearly $1 million to live next to an outdoor kennel facility. I don't think any of my neighbors did as well. So what you're looking at is a diminution in value of a lot of money, tax base, what you're talking about. Same thing's going to happen in Longleaf Pines across the street. Same thing's going to happen along Thurman as well. And I think, as I said earlier, the notion that this should be turned into a commercial corridor is unnecessary. We have everything we need at Harris Teeter and that area. As a matter of fact, there have been vacant shops there until recently. That whole area is being built out. There's no need to extend that commercial expansion into the Thurman Road area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right. I'll move on to board member comments. Does anybody here have any comments?
I have one question. The difference, when we understand that what's maybe going there, a veterinary center, we can't make a decision as a board to spot zone something based on specific use.
Correct.
And that is, I think, what is sometimes not understood by the public, is it consistent with our land use plan?
Right.
We are not privy to, nor should we ask. It's not our position to specifically ask the details, because that would be spot zoning, and it's not correct. So when he brought that up about barking and all these things, those are items that we don't have information on. We have to discuss whether or not the zoning is consistent or not.
Correct. Yeah, we're an administrative body. Those things can be deliberated on by the politicians.
Exactly.
And that's their prerogative,
Yes,
as they've
correct.
done and will continue to. Anybody else?
I think that's a good point, because right next door, even though there's a house there, it's commercial property, and he can tomorrow turn that house into.
It is zoned on the map as C3.
That's right. He
It
could
can
sell it,
change
demolish it, and make it anything.
But the counterpoint to that is, for 270 degrees around that, there's residential and agricultural. So,
Agreed.
To me, to just continue to extend commercial when you have all these homes around it, residential and then agricultural on the backside, just because it's next to a sliver of C3 property, to me doesn't mean it's consistent with the entire plan for that area. When you have to look at the other properties around it.
Right. There's also, I noticed that the A5 and A5F, the veterinarian and all activities within a closed building, whether or not it's totally enclosed or completely enclosed, is all, falls underneath as a possible use. So I don't know, I'm just trying to give that some consideration as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the issue is, I guess, we can't, to your comments in the beginning, we can't give statements to folks that, well, if this is
Totally.
allowed under this zoning.
No, I'm just looking at the.
We're evaluating the application.
We're evaluating the
I'm looking at the
application.
table.
You're
and
100% right.
The number of uses
That's
that are
right.
going on around you.
That's right.
So,
Agreed. Totally agree.
The only other thing that I would add, and I guess I could have done this from there, but to your point, Rusty, in the land use plan, it is in the bubble, what they called out for a future focused land use.
Mm-hmm.
So You know, it's in the
And while
plan, and you got the thing.
Yeah, but while that may be the case, everything around it is not commercial.
Fair enough.
So, then are you saying then that
I got
the counterpoint to it is, does that mean the rest of it's not consistent with the land use plan? Which I don't think we would ever say
But
that.
that's not true. That's not true. I mean, the red portion is commercial. The property on the right side that we're looking at is commercial. So
No,
No,
that's
it's not.
residential.
No, it's residential.
this is,
That's
No, that-
R20.
isn't this commercial where there's a residential house?
No, that's the red
The left
spot.
The
side,
big red side.
the red
The
side.
red
The other side is
commercial.
residential.
Someone's got a house on that.
Well,
It's being used.
I don't want to continue to belabor this point. We voted on the item.
Yeah.
It's going to the Board of Aldermen. I just want to
Yeah.
put those couple things out there, and thank you for saying that. Does,
But it's red now.
any other comments on anything else? Okay, then I will, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can do that.
I was going to turn it over to you, Rusty, or did you want me to?
No, I can do it.
Okay.
So as you all know, Thomas doesn't know, but we've been discussing the potential of a parking committee as part of the planning and zoning board, and how would that work if we wanted to do something in that space. We've continued to talk about it, and it's still under discussion. There's a lot of things to be considered. How would we do it? Does it make sense? Do the Board of Aldermen, do they weigh in and tell us, yes, they want us to do it, or they don't want us to do it? These are all things that are still being discussed. So I don't think we have a way forward yet, but it's still in plan. So maybe by the next meeting, we'll have a plan ready to go.
What would that entail, the parking committee?
So to look at the parking in the city of New Bern, across the entire city, because we're the planning and zoning board. Now, there have been a lot of studies, as you can probably imagine, downtown, there's a lot of discussion about parking. And there have been studies done back in 2007. There was an update to that study in 2017 as to downtown parking. Is it enough? If it isn't, what would you do as a plan to increase it or do something about it? And so, it's been since 2017 since that issue's been taken up. Parking continues to be a discussion. There are folks that say there are enough parking spaces in New Bern. When you look at the parking spaces in New Bern, well over half of those that are in New Bern are privately owned and are leased. So is that enough for the public? What needs to happen? But at least to continue looking at parking, and not just in the downtown corridor, but across the city. Do things need to be done, or do we leave it alone? But to continue to look at it seems to be something the planning and zoning board should at least take up as a committee. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, Rusty. With that, I will open to the staff.
Well, I actually don't really have any comments. You guys have really discussed everything going forward, and we've already kind of gone over the time limits and things to that effect as well. So
Okay.
I have no additional comments.
All right. Jessica?
A week from Monday, our land use ordinance consultant is coming down. He has 3 days of meetings scheduled. He'll be giving an overview presentation to the Board of Aldermen on the 10 steps it's going to take us to get this updated. Just to throw into your options you're weighing out, I would love a subcommittee of this board to work specifically with him on the parking chapter of the ordinance. Sure. It's such an opportunity. We have a professional who is the liaison to the state legislature working on our ordinance, which is so cool. And he brings a wealth of knowledge and has worked in about 32 different jurisdictions in North Carolina, I think. And if you want to talk parking, I will set you up time to pick his brain. Wow. If I could just get 3 of you that wanted to volunteer, call it a committee, and get this professionally written and studied, great opportunity right there in front of us about to start. So I know we're still weighing things out, but just throwing that out there because it's finally here.
Could we at least meet him while
Absolutely.
he's here? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So
It
I'd
is
like
a
that.
topic that will be considered. Every chapter that's in the existing ordinance will be reevaluated and maybe redone. Some standards would change, some would increase, some would decrease. It's really dependent on the steering committee and the stakeholders and the public input. It's no small task to redo completely an ordinance, and that's what we're doing. This isn't simply just a revision to the current ordinance. It'll be brand new when it's done.
So if he has time and wants to meet with a couple
Sure,
of us.
if you will shoot Robert an email in the morning,
I will.
we'll get you a slot with him,
Okay, sure.
if you're available
Absolutely.
those days
I'm
next
available
week.
next week. Yeah.
Awesome.
And include me in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
As well, as I can get there, with my new job. All right.
Oh, you guys have jobs? Wait,
Brad has a job. I don't have a job.
That is true. That is right.
Anyways, we're excited. The excitement's coming. Tune into the next Board of Aldermen meeting to see his presentation, and hard work's getting started, but it's going to be worth it when we're finished.
And as a point to the board, to I guess, come back to Rusty's comment about what's next to a commercial property when it's adjacent to residential or agricultural and forestry type uses. I haven't seen it in this ordinance or land use plan, but one of the things that have been considered in my previous occupation is a transitional use. We're looking at the intensity of what they're going to be doing. In a zoning aspect of things, you would not be able to tell how intense their use is because they're not proposing the use. But a transitional zoning district like an office and institutional zoning district would buffer residential uses from more heavily trafficked commercial uses. Knowing what they were doing, that's not as intense as something as, let's say, a gas station, right, where you're having hundreds of folks come in per day. The intensity of that zoning district, the possibility of that intensity could be something that you consider as well.
Because if you backed out on this map and you go on down Airport Road, there is more commercial properties zoned, is it not, on the right? I know there's a speech therapy, there's that little strip.
I'd have to probably pull up the entire map, but towards the, I guess, the western side, there is a large piece that's not, you can't see that visibly here. And I think possibly further down, there may be more properties that are zoned commercial.
Yeah, they are.
I can tell you that strip of Old Airport that you referenced does have maybe at least 7 parcels, because I've been dealing with folks who have been inquiring about that. So, and that's C4, but it's not C3, but it's a commercial district.
Right.
So there is more commercial that's around it. It's just this map focuses on the parcel along with the adjacent anybody. So.
Right, but I guess the question I have as it relates to that point, Margie, is what is our intention, or what's the intention of the city? Is the intention of the city to make as much of the city commercial as we possibly can because there might be some commercial down the street? I'm just trying to figure it out.
So our land use plan is supposed to say that. The problem with the city of New Bern's land use plan was we call it an update. Only certain areas were updated, and I don't think it was studied to the level that I would have liked it done. And it's highly likely once we get through this ordinance rewrite, we're going to have to go back to that land use plan. So a land use plan is the most important document we're supposed to have. We're supposed to reference it on everything, and ours is not very useful, unfortunately.
Is that the one that was just done a few
Yes.
years ago that was rushed through so fast?
Yes.
I was here.
Yes, and so that's where you do the deep dive study. How does the city of New Bern want to grow? Where do we want connections? Where do we want transition areas? Robert just referenced, and ours doesn't have that.
Right.
So we're working without all of the tools that some boards have the luxury of going to and saying, well, when we did this land use plan, we said, no, this was an area we wanted slower growth. Ours actually says this is an area we want commercial growth. So whether we agree with that or not, that's what the land use plan says by the law that we go to look at. This is where why consistency statements came about, when they started saying you have to look at your land use plan because you have to have a land use plan by state law if you want to enforce zoning. We don't have to do zoning. Fortunately, the city of New Bern says, yes, we see value in regulating what people can and cannot do on different lands, or else it would be the wild, wild west in certain areas. So just for the purposes of conversation, this section says we desire to grow here. So we go and we look at that classification. When you actually make the consistency statement, regardless of what's on here or on the ground or on the zoning, the land use plan is what you're saying it's consistent with, because that's supposed to always be updated. And our land use plan right now says this is an area where we want to see commercial growth. So that's the consistency part. The reasonable part is where you have more flexibility, because we could make a reasonable statement either way and say, hey, it's reasonable. There's commercially zoned property right next to it. But you're also reasonable. You can say, well, it's reasonable to say, no, there's residences all around
Right.
here, if that kind of boils it down more simply. So we are tasked with doing the hard work, this board and staff, of deciding, looking, once we have all the new zoning districts written, what really studying what should and should not be allowed here. Do we need less zoning districts? Do we need more? Do we want to rename them? These are all things we're going to consider. And you see some of the challenges of having so many zoning districts and having these charts that list all these many uses. We can kind of tailor them down so there's these middle ground areas. Maybe this is an area, like you said, where the offices are okay, but something like a Harley shop that's having rallies every weekend is not, or whatever,
Sure.
just something like that,
Right.
that makes a lot of noise. And to other points that were made today, also, we do not do conditional zoning.
Right.
And conditional zoning is where you're looking at a site plan and changing the zoning and adopting the site plan all at once. It's a legal document. It requires a lot of attorney work and different kinds of mapping, and that site plan becomes part of the City of New Bern law when it's adopted, if you were to use that system. I'm not advocating that we do that here. I think our process of, if we get our zoning districts right, get the zoning map colored right, and then fix that land use plan, and we say, this is where growth should happen, this is where we don't want to see growth, and it all works together, then that development review committee process that we have does its job, because it functions better than anything else in our systems right now. And we get all the utility people and all of our emergency partners in the school system, and everyone's around the table looking at these big things that are required to go through that board, and the comments come in. That system here works really well. We've got to get the guiding parameters in the law fixed, and then, as was exposed tonight, let's really go back and look at that land use plan. And it would be really great if we're satisfied with the work of the ordinance to kind of tack this on a land use plan rewrite, and maybe be able to use the same group to do that, because after the next 2 years, they will be intimately familiar with our land uses. Actually, all of us probably will be by then. So,
As well as the area and the people.
And that's kind of what you and I have talked about, which is the other half of our name. We talk a lot about zoning, but we don't talk a lot about planning. And there is a lot that can be done to talk about planning in the city of New Bern.
yeah, and I think, I know staff is advocating, we really would like all of our processes put into this ordinance so it's very clear and consistent. It's something that's lacked here historically that I'm trying to change. So our consultant that we hired, I think he understood the assignment. Brad participated when we interviewed them and reviewed all of we got 6 proposals. 4 of the firms were pretty qualified, but I think the gentleman that we hired, he has the personality to really work well with the city of New Bern. I think everyone's really going to like him.
Yeah, he's a character. You're gonna like him. Yeah.
He's super smart, but he has a great sense of humor, and he's done this for a long time. And he was able to whip up 3 or 4 sets of ordinances of communities our size and places with historic districts and the waterfront challenges in the flood zone, and was not intimidated at all, and just nailed it. I've worked with him on several other projects elsewhere. He comes up with a good product, and we were also able to negotiate into the contract that once this ordinance is adopted, training sessions for the Board of Adjustment, the Board of Aldermen, and this board on how to use and apply the ordinance in congruence with state law, which is going to be awesome. And hopefully we can kind of make an onboarding book, so as we circle members on and off, it's much easier, I hope. So, we're excited to get started. I'm excited now. Next year, I'll probably be all despondent, like, oh, we're so stuck on this section. There's a lot of issues in that ordinance with streets and ingress and egress points and subdivision guarantees and things that have just not been updated in so long. It's going to be a nice, shiny, new, easy-to-use ordinance, and it's also going to be searchable and easier to navigate and easier to modify, because we're going to take it out of the Muni Code system with all the laws, and it will reference our land use ordinance, but take you to another link so it'll be much more efficient and cost-effective to keep it updated. Because the second something gets adopted by the Board of Aldermen, we'll be able to go in at a staff level and administratively update it, so it's right there, and there's not this 6-month lag like when you're searching on the Muni Code with all the other laws. So that's something we're excited about too. And there's going to be a lot of graphics and pictures and intent statements. So this board hasn't faced it too much yet, but sometimes people can come and ask to change the ordinance, just like they can ask to change the zoning map. It's the same process. Having really good definitions and intent statements behind sections of the ordinance is going to help, because it will be clear what we intended, even if the words are not exactly right. If things escalate, you can go back to that. That's something else that's lacking here, but won't be for long. So.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, if you guys can't tell, she's all about it. So, I'm just saying.
It's her, Jay.
No, I can tell.
She's all about it. Yeah. This is going to be fun.
I'm done.
All right. Cool. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I have a move. I have a second. Any discussion? No. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned.
Man,